Hey, it's DBJ. Just to let you know, this is not a pedophile's room. This is actually what my wife and I consider our angel room. But anyway, I'm doing this video on advantage and disadvantage for 5th edition D&D. And this actually applies to any game system that incorporates bennies, something where you gain something for role playing. And a lot of indie games, a lot of games out there have a system where you use hero points or you gain some kind of advantage for doing something. And I thought I'd give my 2 cents on how to, the ways I would use advantage and disadvantage and offering inspiration to players. They give some examples, but these are some of the ways that I would encourage to use it as a, not necessarily a house rule, but a consistent way. I know that it's not something that normally happens in Dungeons and Dragons, and like I heard some guys on a recent podcast, I think of Fear the Boot, they were talking about the fact that they forget to award inspiration to players, and I think I'd end up probably doing the same thing too, just forgetting to do it. So here's some ways and some consistent ways and ways that I would do it. All right. First of all, despite the creatures and encounters where you gain advantage or disadvantage, I would offer advantage through great environmental description. And so what I mean is, instead of someone saying like, I'm going to climb the wall, they describe themselves working together with the players, how they're going to climb the wall, and the things that they're going to do to ensure that they don't fail. So, wow, there's a 30-foot wall to scale over. What do you do? And the player says, well, I'm going to try to find a rope. Or someone says, well, I've got my battle axe. You could wrap it around my battle axe. Okay, yeah, we'll wrap a rope around the battle axe, and I'll wrap it around my waist, and I'm going to take it and toss it over the edge, and have it hook onto something, and yank it, and once it hooks onto something, I'm going to start to rappel up, and when I get halfway up, I'm going to dangle the rope down so the other players can then grab onto it, and the person starts describing all the nuances of it. If to me it feels cinematic, it feels real, it feels gritty, yeah, I give them an advantage on it, I'm the elf, but I'm going to defer to the dwarf in this one to tell me where each handhold is, because he knows the workmanship of the stone better than I do, and I don't want to fall. So as I climb up, he's going to call out places that I should place my hands and feet so I can get to the top. Advantage, you got it. Okay. The reason why, great description, working together. Okay. I would definitely, now along with the description, I'd add that into combat sometimes. Someone has a really great way of describing how they're swinging their sword and combating and fighting and things like that. Now, the problem with giving advantage in combat is that you don't want to keep handing it out every single round. So what you do is you start building it up a little bit, right? You start teasing it a little bit. So the characters are fighting off the orcs, because you always have a horde of orcs, and they're easy to kill, and you always want to fight them, especially at first level. First level characters are hideously underpowered versus some of these things. So just surviving one fight, you're going to need that advantage, and this is where you as the dungeon master can really encourage the people. Instead of the typical, I swing my sword, I block with my shield. I swing my sword, I block with my shield. Instead of that, it's the swinging my sword in the arc, I scream in rage and then spin around trying to stab the one behind me, and then hit the other one with the pummel of my sword in the jaw, and try to leg trip him. I tumble roll, I smash him with my shield and pin him against the wall, and then try to slice his throat. All the descriptive elements, all the building, all the cinematic elements that your players and the game master, dungeon master can add into the game. Advantage. You make it more exciting. Advantage. You describe a scene. If a player describes a scene that I can then reaccount to someone else, and it sounds like it's out of a movie, bam, you got advantage on that one. I give it to you on that. The second way to do advantage is by drama. And it may not be necessarily describing the event, but it's describing the emotion of the event. And yes, I'm taking something now from Within the Ring of Fire. It's the soliloquy. It's the I say a prayer to my God under my breath as I wade into battle. It's the although outwardly I cannot stand fighting, outwardly I claim that I cannot stand fighting side by side with the elf. I'm amazed at his superiority with the long sword and his longbow, and I stand back in awe as he slaughters the other ones, and try to maintain my composure, because I know that he is a dangerous person to fight against, and I'm glad that he's on my side. Well, okay, man, that wasn't really a combat thing, but it's like a inner monologue. It's the emotional description of how this impacts your character and how those things interact in the world. Maybe your mage has a fear of fighting this necromancer, and although you've convinced yourself you have to confront them, you're afraid that you're not afraid to be hurt. You're afraid you may lose your soul if you and go down a dark path that maybe your mentor went down. Well, that's not something everybody would know, and that's not something that even may have a game effect. But hell, I'll throw you some inspiration just because you've added this extra element into the game. And of course, in 5th edition, you have your personality traits, your ideals, your bonds, and your flaws. Your bonds are those things that tie you to the world. And by incorporating those bonds into the world, instead of making you a murder hobo, you really care about this NPC you've encountered. Or there's an NPC in a village, and you've just stated, well, my character's a drifter. Mate, I know someone from here because I remember reading about that statue in the square in this small town. I hope he's still here. I don't want anything to happen here because he was a long lost friend of mine, and I want to reestablish my friendship with him. Those are things that can really grow the game. So bam, you get inspiration for that. And the last thing I'll say for giving somebody inspiration so they can get advantage in the game is flaws. Not just the flaws in your character. Hey, my character is arrogant, or my character speaks before he thinks. But it's playing those things, choosing a moment for your character to be weak, to me, is a clear sign that you not only want to invest in a character, but you want to invest in this world. So for me, you get inspiration for that. Here's a perfect example. I say, I roll dice. Ooh, I rolled a 17. I roll damage. The ogre smashes your character for 18 points of damage, denting your shield and knocking you to the ground. Player character's like, wow, man, that's like over half my hit points. I stagger, standing up, sliding against the wall, dropping my sword to the ground, and go to run away. I try to run under and hide underneath the ogre's table of his extra large furniture or something like that. Well, game-wise, is he afraid? No, there's no fear thing in there. Game-wise, did he drop his sword? I didn't roll anything for that for Game Master. Hey, I'm a Dungeon Master. I didn't say he dropped his sword. But the player chooses to play the character, selling that event like a wrestler does. In wrestling, wrestling isn't faked, it's staged. We know they're not hurt, but they're selling the injury. They're selling the downside of it. They're selling the fact that they're in a precarious situation. If a player sells it, I'm giving them inspiration the next time. Okay, you chose playing in this scenario. The player character with the sword and shield chooses to drop their sword and chooses to run away, knowing that they're going to have to regroup, maybe pull out their crossbow or get their spear that's stuck in the body of a dead orc or something like that. They chose to make that moment. So as a dungeon master, not only would I not take advantage of that, I wouldn't give them penalties for running away. I wouldn't give them penalties on that, but I give them inspiration because that just builds more tension. Wow, now he's got to scramble over to get the spear. Does the ogre go after him before he gets the spear? There's that tension building in there, and that just creates more dramatic, a more dramatic feel for the game. It makes more of a more cinematic element to it, and therefore you deserve inspiration on that. So again, great descriptions in encountering things, in interacting with the environment. Great descriptions. You get inspiration for that. From me, boom, you get advantage on that. I'll just give you the advantage on that. When it comes to drama, the soliloquy, the inner monologue, the emotional impact that your character has with those around you, how they affect you and you affect them. It has no combat abilities. This is just the inner story that's running throughout the game, so that by the end of the game, you realize that maybe these player characters haven't said much to each other. But at the end of it, they are now fast friends. They've gone through hell and back again, and they know each other in and out. You get it. Here's some inspiration. That's what you get. You get that inspiration because you can spend it again, because I guarantee if that player's doing that consistently, they're going to get inspiration over and over again. Lastly, I did a video on this about playing weak. Not playing a weakness, not just playing your flaws, but playing weak. Choosing your moments when you fail. Choosing that the beautiful princess comes up to you and tries to convince you of something, and the player goes, she's beautiful. She doesn't have to convince me of anything. I'll do whatever she says. Just decides to do that. The player character says, well, I'm only down to 5 hit points and I had 38. I don't really think it's appropriate for me to make my perception roll because I'm too busy holding on to my ribs and trying not to cough up a lung. A player chooses to put themselves in a weaker position. They choose to gather around those weaker elements of them and role play those weaker elements just as strongly as they role play their stronger elements. Then to me, you get inspiration. So anyway, it's DBJ. I'm signing out. As always, create, don't destroy, and especially when it comes to drama, when it comes to action, when it comes to cinematic descriptions, please don't destroy those elements. Please don't reduce your table down to the lowest common denominator of a bunch of characters just going around where they're nothing more than just a bunch of combat maneuvers. I cleave. I backstab and flank. That's all I am. I am the buffer. All I do is buff other players. Don't be a cliche. Be organic. Be real. And if you trust in your dungeon master or game master, your storyteller, your flame tender, they will trust in you. Hopefully you don't have one of these worst GMs that I've done videos on, and you don't have one of those at your table, or on your G+. But if so, I'm very sorry. Maybe there's ways we can go about changing that. But if you have somebody you can trust that they will not take advantage and destroy you, but they're here to create a collaborative system. So anyway, I've already signed out. Maybe I'm just talking too much. See ya.